Hello from my living room. Change of pace today. So, an open secret is that the videos that I do every month are generally speaking what I'm personally working on that month. And this month is no different. So, what's been coming up for me a lot lately is my own conflict aversion, my own fear of conflict, and how that holds me back sometimes from living to my absolute full potential and from truly respecting my boundaries as an individual and thus advocating for myself and loving myself the most I can, right? So, in order to illustrate this, I would like to share a personal story that happened recently. So, as many of you know, my husband Carlos is Mexican American, and so we have a very close relative who lives in town who is very Mexican and elderly. And so this has been happening throughout my pregnancy. So as many of you know, I'm pregnant, and in fact, I'm almost 32 weeks pregnant right now, which means I'm big, and that's 8 months. For those of you who don't know the pregnancy weeks. So anyway, I've got a belly, and we've been visiting this relative, throughout my pregnancy. And so a pattern has emerged where she's from a different culture than how I grew up. And in that culture, physical affection is a lot more freely and widely shared. And especially if a woman is pregnant, it's not, at least for her acculturation and her generation, it's not seen as a problem at all. In fact, it's self-explanatory that you would just go up to a pregnant woman and touch her belly, kiss her belly, whatever seems loving to you, because to her that's loving. So she had been doing this with my belly, and I'd been noticing that it had been violating a boundary for me, because how I noticed that is that I feel myself wanting to shrink back, and it felt like too much to me. But I had kept violating my own boundaries by allowing her to do this, because I was rationalizing, oh, she's, elderly, she's from a different culture, that I was translating it in my mind to mean oh, this just means love to her. While at the same time, I was noticing this visceral reaction in my own body of recoil. And so recently when we went to see her, my body just solved this for me. And when she came up and she approached my belly and started kissing my belly, I physically recoiled. I took a step back slightly, and she looked up at me just like deer in the headlights, like, what's wrong? And she was aghast, And so what I said was, well, maybe next time you could ask before touching my belly. And then she turned away from me in disbelief, and it was very clear that I was on her shit list because of that. She has some black and white thinking about people who are for and against her. And so that's what I'd been afraid of this whole time, is that if I did stand up for my boundary, that she wouldn't understand it, and then I would get on her shit list. So and she's somebody who's important in my life, so I did not want to be on her shit list. And so what I noticed in myself is that throughout that entire visit, where I felt this coldness, this was at the beginning, it was like when I walked in the front door, right? So we had the whole visit ahead of us, and I just noticed this nausea in me, in my belly, and this sinking feeling, and my nervous system was going into fight or flight the whole time, was chronically upregulated that whole time. And I was just like, wow, it's so hard for me to sit here and be present while knowing that she and I have differences of opinion and different needs, different desires. In other words, that there was a conflict in the room, and it was making me physically sick. And, so after that visit, I did a lot of soul searching and shadow work on my own, and I realized that actually the problem wasn't her needs, her acculturation, her beliefs, And it wasn't mine either. My acculturation, my needs, my beliefs. The problem was my belief that conflict was dangerous. That it was dangerous for me to have a different set of needs and desires than somebody else, a set of needs and desires that oppose somebody else's. And it dawned on me that actually in itself, that's not dangerous at all. It's just that I was ascribing a meaning to it of being dangerous simply because of the way I grew up, where it wasn't allowed to be in conflict. I saw my mother just smoothing everything over, as I'm sure many of you did too, all the time, at her own expense. And so I internalized that, of course. And so I did a bunch of my own work around affirming to myself and feeling into what if conflict were safe? What if it were safe for me to have needs and desires that oppose that of someone else? And in fact, I'll read you exactly the affirmation that ended up really working for me. So I said, I am strong and at peace in the midst of conflict, free from the pressure to compromise my boundaries. Because of course, what many of us who are socialized as women have observed our whole lives is that it is the woman who accommodates, right? It's the woman. If there is conflict, it's going to be the woman who's expected to cede her boundaries. When I was working as a faculty member, this was like a running joke between me and the other, specifically young female faculty members, is that our male faculty members who were of similar age never got students who would contest their grades. But we did all the time. All the time. We would get students coming into our office and saying, hey, this isn't B- work. This is definitely B work, or this is definitely not B+. This is an A-, and just telling us that as if they were the authority. And then, of course, expecting unconsciously that the female would listen to them empathically and then change where she was at, change her boundary. And it happened again and again and again to us as women colleagues, never to the guys of the same age. And so this is just a shadow in the gender dynamic of our culture, that it is the woman's job to accommodate and to compromise her boundaries, which is her needs. And so it was extremely helpful for me to meditate on and repeat this affirmation to myself, that I'm strong and at peace in conflict, and that I'm free from the pressure to compromise my own boundaries. And I've ended up feeling a lot better about that ever since. And just looking at my notes here. So you might ask, why should I work on this? Because I don't like conflict. It makes me uncomfortable. So I would ask you, well, are you comfortable manipulating other people? Because that's what you're doing. So the reality is that we all have needs, and we all have no choice but to get our needs met. That's simply the way that human beings are. That's the nature of needs. We need them to be met. And so the reality is that if you are not holding up your own boundaries, if you are not protecting your own boundaries and standing up for yourself and meeting your own needs in that way, like your need for comfort, including physical comfort and safety and space and time to yourself, and to be around only the people you're really excited to be around, etc., etc. Those are all meeting your needs by upholding boundaries. So if you're not doing that, then I guarantee you that you are getting your needs met indirectly in other ways, in manipulative ways. And by manipulation, I don't mean anything special or unusual or particularly bad, really. I just mean that you're getting your needs met indirectly because you're not comfortable asking for them to be met directly. So an example of this would be, for example, playing the victim. Like, oh, I hurt so bad I can't go out with these people, or like one thing one thing that I am guilty of for sure is um, like waking my husband up too early because I need physical affection. I need cuddling, or I'm grabbing at him when he's trying to do something. Because I can't just say like, would you be willing to have 10 minutes of cuddle time right now? I'm feeling like I need a hug right now, you know. So we all have these little patterns of little manipulative things that we do, whether you're socialized as male or female, because we all have limitations to how comfortable we are with asking for our needs to be directly met. So I wish you guys, what do I wish? I wish you guys a fascinating journey into acknowledging how you may or may not feel comfortable with conflict, and thus feel comfortable upholding your own boundaries, even when it seems like they oppose other people's needs, desires, boundaries. And I do suggest working with an affirmation or two that would work for you. Maybe being, I am strong and at peace. I'm strong and at peace in the midst of conflict, free from the pressure to compromise my boundaries. And just to do a lot of journaling around when have you upheld boundaries in conflict without acquiescing? How has that gone for you? And maybe even to do some shadow work around a time when you were in a conflict situation, and using as a portal into the shadow work. And of course, you can go to my website, the shop on my website, to download my recorded shadow work meditations if you want. It'd be a great way to do this. But using the body sensation, the feeling sensation of maybe feeling sick from the conflict or feeling in danger, and working into that to see if you can soften and heal that feeling in your body, so you can stay strong even in the midst of conflict, and thus be absolutely authentic and true to yourself and love yourself. All right, bye-bye.